Hello Internet and welcome to this week's edition of 1 Minute Answers from 1 Minute Economics, an edition dedicated to the future of cryptocurrencies. But before getting started with today's questions, I want to do two things. Number one, pick the topic for next week, and the topic is going to be disaster preparedness. So if you're worried about, let's say, a financial crisis, or if you have questions about the economic implications of all sorts of other disasters, simply write a comment below and I will do my best to answer next week. Number two, since we're on the topic of disaster preparedness, I want to remind you guys that I'm almost finished with my new book that's going to help people prepare against just that. All sorts of disasters, from deflationary shocks like a stock market crash to currency devaluations and all sorts of other calamities. So if you like my way of seeing things, if you appreciate my perspective as an economist and my ability to provide value through the content I produce, I really think you're going to find my book interesting. So I'm going to ask you for not a minute, but 10 seconds of your time. And here's what would help tremendously. If you could go to 1minuteeconomics.com and simply subscribe to my newsletter. There's a box over there where you type in your email address and that's it. It takes maybe not even 10 seconds, more likely close to 5. So if you can, please subscribe to my newsletter, and I promise I'm not going to bombard you with messages. I've sent exactly 0 emails so far this year, and basically this email list is just my way of keeping in touch with people and sharing important announcements, primarily the launch of books and stuff like that. So it would help tremendously if you would just take a few seconds of your time and subscribe to my newsletter. Thanks a lot, guys. The first question for today has been asked by Dan, who would like to know if the cryptocurrency phenomenon reminds me of the early days of domain names. And the answer is that while domain names and cryptocurrencies are remarkably different beasts, I would say that yes, there are definitely a lot of similarities. First of all, let me just say that as assets, domains and cryptocurrencies tend to be remarkably different in that domain names are risk-on assets, or in other words, assets that tend to do well when the market itself is doing well, with a few exceptions such as, Chinese-driven sectors of the domain economy, whereas cryptocurrencies tend to be risk-off, or if you will, even anti-fragile assets, or in other words, assets that thrive when there's uncertainty, when there's fear in the air, and so on. But with that stated, yes, there are many similarities because the cryptocurrency world is a place filled with potential. But on the other hand, it's definitely the Wild West over there, just like in the early days of domain name investing. And what I mean is that whenever you're a pioneer, whenever you're blazing trails, you need to accept the fact that it's going to be harder for you than for the people who are going to invest later on, when there's going to be a proper infrastructure and everything's going to work a lot better. So yeah, there are a lot of things that don't work properly in the world of cryptocurrencies, from exchanges that go bust overnight, to wallet security issues, to, the technology behind cryptocurrencies itself. But at the end of the day, if you want to be on the cutting edge of technology, if you want to be a pioneer, if you want to, take advantage of potentially amazing returns, then you have to just accept the Wild West factor that is essentially inherent whenever you're investing in something new. For today's second and final question, Bill asked if there's even a 1% chance of Bitcoin Cash dethroning Bitcoin as the top cryptocurrency. Now, let me just say that just like in the Dumb and Dumber movie, even 1 in a million is still a chance. Of course, we cannot exclude the possibility of that happening, but I'm going to go ahead and say that I consider this scenario highly, highly unlikely. And I followed a lot of debates about Bitcoin Cash versus Bitcoin, and I think the number one mistake people tend to make in the cryptocurrency world is the fact that they pay way too much attention to the technology dimension and not enough attention to the economics, or if you will, the business behind the success of a cryptocurrency. And of course, from a technological perspective, we can talk about the benefits that Bitcoin Cash puts on the table, but come on, there are tons of altcoins out there, and while most of them are just useless clones, there are several that bring innovation on the table that far exceeds what Bitcoin Cash has to offer. So Bitcoin Cash in no way has a monopoly on innovation, and this brings us right back to the economics of it all. Because let's be honest, Bitcoin is not the top dog, or not the currency that has 50% of the crypto market share, for purely technological reasons. No. There are a lot of factors at play that have nothing to do with technology. For example, the fact that Bitcoin has the early bird advantage. It was there first. It was adopted by people. Each time people talk about Bitcoin, they basically promote this particular cryptocurrency free of charge and so on. Quick example, .com versus .net. You might argue that .net makes more sense. Internet, .net, it sounds better. What's a .com, right? But essentially, despite that being the case, here we are today in 2017 with .com being the top dog by far and .net, despite having many things working in its favor, being far, far, far away. So yeah, the number one thing I want to get across is this. Don't make the mistake of assuming that it's only technology that makes or breaks a cryptocurrency, because that is hardly the case. That's it for today, guys. Thanks a lot for watching. And remember, the topic for next week is disaster preparedness. So if you have a question about the economics behind any kind of disaster you can think of, be it a financial calamity or a disaster of another nature, simply ask me by writing a comment below and I will do my best to answer next week. And please remember what I've mentioned at the beginning of this video, and if you can, give me 5 to 10 seconds of your time by heading over to 1 Minute Economics and subscribing to my newsletter. I promise I won't spam you, I will simply let you know when I publish a new book. Again, visit 1minuteeconomics.com, type in your email address, click submit, and you're done. As always, of course, please like my videos, comment, be active in the community, and if you haven't by now, subscribe to 1 Minute Economics. If possible, it would help tremendously if you could perhaps share my videos on Facebook every now and then, tweet about them, and so on. There's no such thing as a promotion method that's insignificant, so even if you don't have a lot of friends, followers, or whatever, a simple share, simple tweet, stuff like that counts way more than people realize. And of course, those who can afford to and want to support the channel financially as well can do so by buying my Wealth Management 2.0 book or donating through PayPal, Bitcoin, or Patreon. More information can be found on oneminuteeconomics.com. Thanks a lot, guys, and have an awesome weekend.